Should be going out there on Facebook and YouTube. Yeah. Now we'll let people in the live audience here in Zoom. Hello, everyone. Justice, I'll make you a co-host so you can let people in as well.
Sounds good.
Oh, hey,
Spotlight
Tom.
myself. Tom Silver, is that a buddy?
I know Tom many
All
years.
right, great. Awesome. Spotlight myself, spotlight our guest. And like I said, let's get Justice co-host in case she needs to let people in or do any admin. Okay. And then we'll just few people are streaming in here. If you're out there on Facebook, you're out there on YouTube. If you're catching us for the first time, we'll intro the program in a minute. Sort of letting people in to the Zoom, letting people find the stream live out there on socials. We are streaming not only to our channels for piano technicians master classes on Facebook and YouTube, but also to our guest channels, Aaron Larget-Caplan. And so, hello, if we're seeing you out there. We will put out some links in the chat that should be able to appear on YouTube and Facebook, which will allow you to come and join us on Zoom if you feel like being a little bit digitally closer and engaging with us in the Zoom. That would allow you to, maybe speak during the session if you did want to, or come on video. No pressure there. We always play it by ear. We don't always have interaction, but the interaction is welcome. Questions are welcome. Yeah, so thank you guys for showing up, and I will intro our program to give us a foundation, and then we'll get started here. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We gather here every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world, including manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. Find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. You can also subscribe to Radio Hour, this program, for just $16 a month. You get direct access to each week's private Zoom call, as well as archival recordings of over 200 episodes in our member area. You can join using the link bit.ly/joinptrh. That's bit.ly/joinptrh. Don't forget to check out the podcast audio only version of the program. It comes out a bit later after the video, and yes, it's audio only, but people do seem to enjoy it. We are loved all over the globe. We've reached top status. I'm talking top 100, top 10, even #1 status in various locales. We're out there in Belgium, the Philippines, France, Germany. Lots of folks all over the world enjoy the program. So check out the podcast, check out our blog, where we share some technical information that gives you a sneak peek into what's inside our members only content on the technical area. That's the Piano Technicians Masterclass library. We got cool stuff: voicing, regulation, history of pianos, action balancing, all that kind of stuff. It's like a little bit higher end stuff that only the real pro, high paid folks do, and you can log in there and get that knowledge. It's hard to come by. Additionally, check us out on our socials: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. Maybe there's one or two others. Just search us online and you'll find it. All right, let's introduce our guest for today. I'm very excited to introduce Aaron Larget-Caplan. Aaron is an internationally acclaimed guitarist and composer known for his innovative approach and creative artistry. With over 120 solo and chamber compositions and 11 critically acclaimed albums, he has redefined the classical guitar landscape. His new Lullaby Project has brought 77 new lullabies from 72 composers to life, connecting contemporary music with new audiences. Aaron is also celebrated for his groundbreaking interpretations of John Cage's works, pushing the limits of what the guitar can do. Beyond performing, he arranges, publishes, and mentors, making him one of today's most influential voices in classical music. Aaron, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
And for those of you listening on audio, I have to say, thank you for delivering your lovely long locks as well. You have a beautiful head of hair. I'm sure it takes a bit to maintain that. You got to have the right conditioners and so forth. So we appreciate the time and effort you put into that.
traumatic haircuts as a curly hair.
Traumatic haircuts as a kid. Said I'm not doing it. Not doing it again. And also it's like kind of a nice scene. It looks almost like a kind of like a little music porch in your house or something. Is that?
Yes, in 2019, 2020, I built a little studio in our basement. I have an old
Oh,
house
okay.
in Boston, and we were finishing up some of the basement, and then 2020 hit, and I said, I could build a little studio. And so
Okay.
on the walls behind my camera, they're stone, and
Oh,
I have a little seating area, and you got my little Jean Singer Sargent, of course, and some other art.
okay.
And then this is where I will record, teach. When I'm not going into bigger studios, this is when I'm working with composers. Yeah, my little kind of,
Great.
I don't see the sun, so we put a window into the middle.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was actually thinking it feels like you're just out, like the outdoors is just outside and you're like, no, there's a concrete wall there. So you've
Well,
done a good job making it feel bright and have that outdoor energy.
my,
So
my
good job with
wife
that.
is very smart, and she goes, "You spend so much time down here that we should put a window." And I'm so happy with it.
It is. It gives you a vibe. It doesn't give you, it takes away the base of the vibe. Just the window. You got a
Yeah.
window. Who
Uh,
cares where it goes?
I think so many musicians go into a studio and we're so like, okay,
Oh man,
it's just so not real to what we do.
it's such a weird place. Yeah.
It is, and it's another type of playing. And so I tried to create something that would work, was functional. And I mean, I'm not a high-end studio. This is not Abbey Road.
Mm,
Uh, but it is comfortable, and it's good for some solo stuff, and especially collaborating with composers. It's very good for that. So
very nice. Well, we're probably going to have you play some music soon, just to kind of give people a foundation of the type of sounds you make. I'm curious to reach back there to the Lullaby Project. That sounds very interesting. And it reminds me of I myself over the past few years I'll have trouble sleeping, and so I will I don't know, find podcasts, audiobooks, all sort of stuff to just kind of keep my brain from spinning too much while I'm trying to sleep. And I mean, the lullaby in itself is just like a beautiful piece of music. Did you have that intention at all that like people might listen
well,
to this to literally go to sleep, or is that just not, that's
I,
just a collateral benefit?
yeah, I mean, so the project is the new Lullaby Project. It's online,
Okay.
and back in my first album came out
Hmm.
in 2006. I had recorded a Cuban lullaby, Afro-Cuban lullaby, and I
Mm.
would play it, and I would have Bach, I would have flamenco, I'd have contemporary works, and this stupid little lullaby kept getting so much attention.
Mm.
It's a beautiful piece. And again, my wife said you should do an album of lullabies, and I despise that idea because I see music as something that's interactive and, active listening and not just tracks to relax to. That seems to be like the death knell of classical music. And so I happened upon Toru Takemitsu's arrangement of Summertime. And I went, wait, that's a lullaby. And it's new. And I just bing. And so I started asking composers in '07, end of '06, '07. And I wanted a contemporary piece that was just a lullaby. And some of my most favorite characteristics of the guitar, timbre, the idea of the different tone colors. If it's played too fast, it can sound like a box. I didn't want to do just dances, but I was also inspired by David Starobin, who is at Curtis and Manhattan School. He did an album called New Dance, and it was short dances, Elliott Carter and others who wrote for him. And I loved that album, just dug it. And I said, oh, I'll do a thing of lullabies. And life happened. We had a house fire. We had all these things go on. And so some of the composers wrote darker lullabies. And in 2010, the first album came out, and I thought I'd be done. And then the album came out, and composers were like, hey, I know this guy who wrote this lullaby. Can I write you a lullaby? And it just spiraled out of control. And
Mm.
I say that because I'm a horrible sleeper. They don't make me go to sleep. But I have microtonal lullabies, 12-tone lullabies, polyphonic lullabies. They are contemporary pieces, but they're lullabies. So as
Mhm.
one composer put it, he was challenged to made him step back because he wasn't just writing a technical piece that would challenge the guitar. He had to write something beautiful. And I, in my specs, it's this, 2 to 5 minutes long. Don't do too many scordatura. Can't be a dance, and it must be beautiful. And
Mhm.
I, there's always, I know the boss, so there's always leeway. And I premiered, I think, 77 or 78 last year, and it's just kind of, 3 albums, two anthologies of scores, and one person wrote a review of the first album on Amazon and said, I have insomnia. I fall asleep on track 3 every night. It's like, woo. Well, the composer of track 4 saw that and went, wait, you gotta listen to track 4 too. So, if and the guitar is, I know this is a piano class, so, piano focused, but the guitar is like the most beautiful instrument in the world.
Oh, uh-oh. All right, we gotta stop. Right. That's
Well,
sacrilegious.
it is. No,
Just
when
kidding.
I no, I'm just kidding. It's often, oh, it's such a relaxing instrument, such a quiet instrument, and it is. But I kind of hedge my bet. I dare people to fall asleep, but the music is so good that they stay awake. And so,
Hmm.
but each one has a story. There's Adam and Eve's first lullaby. There's a lullaby inspired by a leaky roof. A lullaby you shouldn't hear the end of because you should be asleep. There's all of these things, and after like 20, I was kind of like, okay, I'm done. And then someone would write something that I really connected to, and I probably have 10 more in the waiting, and I just, as they come, I try and play them and show them off, and hopefully it's a good introduction to people to hear these composers.
Yeah. I would write a scientific lullaby.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So I studied neuroscience, although I'm not like a practicing neuroscientist these days. And I specifically did a lot in the realm of language, and also birdsong, which have like an overlap. They study birds and they're studying language and music and things like that from a animal model perspective. And I don't know how much has been theorized or investigated in this particular domain. But I'm also kind of familiar with like, um, you know, the realm of hypnosis and these kind of things where it's meant to put you in different brain states. And so, remember a long time ago, I can't cite a specific paper, but basically, when someone's talking, and the syllables in the words come at about a specific rate, when they're talking, specific, person in a certain context or whatever. And your brain actually not only listens for the words and the syllables to interpret them, but it starts to entrain to the rhythm of the words. So it actually detects a regular rhythm of the words that are coming along, and it does that probably to try to predict what's coming next. And there's a lot of reasons it would entrain to the rhythm of the speaking that you're doing. And then if you listen to people who do hypnosis, you'll notice that they might start out quickly, and then they might have these pauses that come out of nowhere. And then they might slow their speaking down at some point. And what I find interesting about that is that I don't know if anybody studied this, but I think that it's literally changing the wavelength of your brain waves as they're speaking to you. And the slower wavelength brain waves are the ones that happen when you're sleeping. So it would be interesting to approach that from a musical perspective,
Oh,
which maybe somebody sort of did, intuitively or purposefully in your
I mean,
collection.
I think the influence of the lullabies, and then of course John Cage with this idea of space and timbre, and a lot of I have an album of inspired by Japan, and so
Mhm.
studying and listening to different traditional instruments, and there's so much out there.
Mhm.
And the magic of sound is unbelievable to me.
So I would love to hear a little bit of something. You could do a lullaby, you could do something else, but I just kind of like to give people some context because you do play beautifully and it'll give us something to jump off from as well.
So this is, sorry, for the pianists in the world, I have to tune. Sorry, it doesn't.
Yes, we
Every
love
day.
tuning.
Ready?
I love listening to tuning. There's nothing more. I could tune a guitar. I tuned a kalimba the other day. That was really fun. There's nothing more fun than just tuning things.
So this is a little piece that I wrote. It's called Honey Cadence. It's from the album of the same title that came out in 22. And one of the things I would like to do, for those who are watching, you can see my hand will move around. So on the guitar, we have this thing called timbre. So that's the same pitch, but depending where and how I strike, it changes the timbre, the color of the instrument, of the note. And this piece, I wrote it with that in mind to a point. Other parts of the guitar that's really cool is I have 4 middle Cs. 4. I mean, and that's without using harmonics. They all have different qualities. So a lot of guitar playing is kind of a choreography of what do I want to bring out. It's not just here's that note, play that note. Because depending on the chord, I can only play it in one place. But depending on what's happening, I could also play it in 3 or 4 other places or use a harmonic. There's a harmonic. So, which each one, depending how we listen, will make something come across so differently. And then also the guitar is really good at repeated notes to a certain extent. So there's a little bit of that in this as well. So this is Honey Cadence.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was honey cadence.
Okay, I concede the guitar is the most beautiful instrument. You win.
I admit I get piano envy. I get more sustain envy, pedal envy, because I mean, you guys have Prokofiev and Mussorgsky and these. I mean, I can play Mussorgsky, but it's like, yeah, you have Prokofiev. That just right there, and Debussy. I mean, if Debussy wrote one piece for the guitar, I'd be like, that would have changed the world, but he didn't.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you walked into it. I have to say, you can't call it piano envy. To call it pianist envy. I think that sounds more appropriate. But anyways, I digress. It's very, yeah, that the one thing that I noticed that popped into my head, like the beautiful instrument type of thing. And I think that the one thing you could say about the various instruments that they have, well, they have different timbres. That's a word that you brought into the conversation earlier, right? You create a different timbre within the timbre of a guitar, but the guitar itself has its own range of timbres, and that's really a lot of what makes an instrument. It gives it its characteristic sound. That basically is what timbre means. And I would say the guitar, the classical guitar in and of itself, has an access to like a sensuous quality that the piano doesn't have access to, and I do think there is a place where you can access things in the guitar that you can't just you can't get there as well on the piano.
I mean, it's one of two instruments where you have to use your body only to make sound, which is the harp and the guitar, and of course the voice. But there's a string instrument, there's a bow, wood instruments, we have reeds. I mean, there's other things. I mean, winds are the most, to me, they're gorgeous. I love that. But I can manipulate the tone and like I don't know if it comes across on the internet.
Yeah.
But that kind of woo, like, how do you notate that? But I'm just pushing down on the string as opposed to I can bend pitches, I can vibrato, I can lower the pitch, pull the pitch, all of those things because of the frets and the strings, and it's nylon. I started on electric guitar. I was a big Hendrix, Doors, Led Zeppelin, and I loved manipulating the strings. I think whammy bars and wah-wah pedals are a gift from God. I'm not a huge distortion fan, but I'm matured. And taking some of that and those sounds, I'm trying to find them and manipulate the instrument to create that sound. I was just in Milan at Sforza Castle. They have an amazing instrument museum. And they had one of the lever pianos where you use your knees and there's a lever underneath and it would manipulate the pads that stop the notes as opposed to pedals. You could make your left hand staccato with the lever, and the right hand would be all legato. So you sit there and it's like, what an amazing trick to do. And that's Mozart. So Mozart had this in his head, or in his ear. And I just think all of these sounds that we create, they're, when it's marketing to say this is what the piece should be. This is what the sound is. This person has the best sound. That's one sound. And I think it goes against music to say this is the only way it can sound. And I know I'm kind of tangent off that, but
no, but that's great. This would be a great access point also to talk about the John Cage work that you've done. Tell us, tell us about what prompted that exploration and where you've gone with it.
Yeah, so I went to New England Conservatory, and at the conservatory there is Stephen Drury. He's still there. I'm a wonderful pianist who knew John Cage, worked with Cage, and so Steve coached me on a Stravinsky chamber group, but besides that, I just went to a lot of concerts, and I just had music kind of in my head, and I liked reading about this guy who kind of put his, nose up to everyone else, and he didn't, but he was just reading his letters. I was like, oh, he's a joyous guy. Not something
Hmm.
we always think about with classical music.
Hmm.
And years went by, and I had recalled a conversation where the idea of arranging some cage came up. And I went to Steve, and I'm like, Steve, do you remember what that was? And he said, yes, 6 melodies for violin and piano, arrange the piano part. He thought it would fit. And I went to the library, checked out the score, went home, and I think I changed the register of 4 or 5 notes in the collection of 6 pieces. And I was teaching at Boston Conservatory, and I ran into Sharon Leventhal, an amazing violinist. And I said, I have this piece I just arranged. Would you like to play it? And she literally pulled out her score and said, I love these pieces. She premiered it with me. The arrangement, Edition Peters liked the arrangement and said, we'll publish this. And the John Cage Trust signed off. And I found out later, it was the first time they had done that for guitar. And I was like, cool, I'm done. And then people bought it. It was amazing. And Peters reached out again and said, would you do some solos? Gene Capriolio, wonderful, recently retired person at Edition Peters. And I had already gone down that rabbit hole. And I found some early pieces, early mid-career, kind of through 1948. And I arranged those for solo guitar. So they're all piano or keyboard pieces, let's call it that. And then I took his first prepared piano piece called Bacchanal, and I put it on 2 guitars. And so it's a prepared guitar duo. And there are prepared guitar pieces. It's much different to prepare a guitar than a piano because gravity, anything you put just tips over, and it's just
Hmm.
a lot of, I only have 1 string. The piano has, each note has 3, so you can
Hmm.
weave things in. And
Hmm.
I had to really, certain pieces just don't work. But one of the things that I had to deal with is I don't have a pedal. And a lot of Cage's music has that, I use a sustain. So if I play a scale, A, B, C, D, E, La, Si, Do, Re, Mi, or I can do,
Hmm.
that's called campanella, bells, and it's a mix of harmonics, natural notes. And I went through my 2 favorite pieces are Dream and In a Landscape, and especially In a Landscape. I've probably played that 150 times in concert, and just to, it's a different piece, and I think with an arrangement, we want it to sound like it was written for the instrument, and that's not always easy. So there's a lot of, I remember I recorded it with a pianist. You might know him because you're a jazz pianist, right, Ethan?
Yeah, I play jazz.
So there's a pianist, Steve Hunt. He is a fusion jazz pianist. He played with
Okay.
Alan Holdsworth, and he
Okay.
amazing ear. And he had recorded, engineered my Cage album, and he listened to that, didn't think anything of it. And then he came to the concert where I did the album release, and he's watching my hand, and he's like, "What? It's just an arpeggio." And something that can be very simple on the piano, on the guitar, to make those things work requires
Sure.
choreography, a little gymnastics, and some creativity on how to realize it. But it's so much fun. And I'm working on another set of solos. I'll premiere a couple in San Francisco next month at the Center for New Music from his harmonies. I've done some songs. I just, I really dig his music. And I got to do a residency at the John Cage Trust last summer, which is at Bard College, and I was working on some of the Satie Cage relationship and arranging some Satie. I get jealous. I love the music, and I want to put it on my instrument, and you know, I guess that's how it comes. So, and people
Very
have
cool.
like it, so I keep playing it.
One of our clients in in New York, we have a piano tuning business. I'm not sure that was apparent, but so we have a business where we tune pianos. We got a team of about 5 people, go around and tune pianos. And one of our clients is kind of like an app developer and programmer. Interesting guy. He did electronic music at I believe it was University of Illinois, back in the day when it was like electronic music, like when they were just
Had
like,
like, one room just filled with,
yeah, just
computer.
studied with those like pioneers in it. And he had the um, he had the distinction of being able to say, I asked him, what brought you to New York? He said, well, Lou Reed asked me to move to New York. Lou Reed had heard about him and, wanted him to work on an album. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And he also got into app development and programming because that mix of like, the musical brain and that stuff. And his company built this John Cage anniversary app where I believe you could do like prepared piano stuff that you use. This was many years ago.
Okay, yeah, and there's a full
Absolutely.
33 app where you can, go around and record for 4 minutes and 33, and
Okay.
it's like a globe, and it pops up, hey, 4 to 33 in Berlin, 4:33 in Timbuktu, and that's awesome. It's actually playing guitar for the first 10, 15 years of my career. People come up to me and be like, I saw Segovia, and they would tell me their story of Segovia, and you remind me of this, you remind me of that, and the last 10 years, so my John Cage guitar album came out in 2018, so not quite 10 years. Um, but I've been playing that stuff so over 10 years. So yeah. Oh, I met John Cage. Oh, I saw him. I sat next to him at a movie, and you get these other stories that are. It's really cool to play. I mean, I play a lot of contemporary music, and it is fun to play music. People know I have a couple Spanish albums. I have some Bach albums, a Bach album. But to hear people's connection to a composer and to hear that story, it feels very special to be a part of that. And if I can pass that on and bring out those good memories, then and surprise, a lot of musicians are like, oh, Cage, and they know John Cage of 1970 with the amplified, Cactus, or a lot of the chance music, which I think can be really awesome to experience. I don't buy recordings of it per se,
Mhm.
but they're surprised that he wrote lyrical music. It gets
Mhm.
overshadowed,
Yeah.
uh, and there's a lot of music out there, and
Mhm.
people like podcasts. I mean, you just can listen all day long and not even, take a dent out of the amount of music that's out there available.
Yes. So we have a piano piece queued up,
Oh,
we have a video of. Should we move to that? That would be kind of
yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Do you want an introduction with it or just
Yeah, absolutely. Give us an intro. I'll
so
cue it up and
this
yeah.
is a piano piece that I wrote in 2023 and Aurore, and it is French for sunrise. And the piece is based on 5 pitches. It's a short 2-minute solo, and John McDonald, who teaches at Tufts University, composer and longtime supporter and friend. I was doing a residency there, working with students on writing for guitar, and I was going to do a recital, and he said, "What if we open with your piano?" And I said, "Cool." And he took it and fixed some of my spellings and made sure all the reaches are proper. Um, and wrote this piece. And again, I'm influenced a lot by lullabies and Cage. This one shows that. Some of the other ones are very prickly, but yeah. So it's a short solo.
Let's check it out. Here we go. Make sure to share that audio. Aurora. That was nice.
Thank you.
And you said that was written for piano, or that was written for guitar and adapted, or
Oh,
forget,
written for piano.
written for piano.
I had a friend staying with us who was a pianist, and she did not play new music. And then she was getting ready to move back home, and someone said, "Well, why don't you have Aaron write you a piece?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, I'd play that." And for the like 3 months she was with us, she would never touch contemporary music. Like just no. Anything after Debussy was just no. And so when she said that, I went, oh, and I went downstairs to my studio here and I sketched out the piece and, changed a few notes the next day and pretty much wrote the piece right there. Just, I knew her playing enough that I think that it came through, but it's kind of fun to write for a piano. Like, it's just,
Got lots of choices.
it's big, but you
It's a
can
big
only
thing.
there's such a limit. Like, I think of the Ligeti etudes and I'm just like, oh my God, how did he come up with this type of writing? You just had such a mastery of the instrument. And yeah, I get jealous of that one too. Those are other pieces that I would learn the instrument for that.
Do you have a piano?
Yeah, we're babysitting a piano. Former student of mine, guitarist, moved into a small apartment, and we ran a series in Boston. We would invite visiting artists to come do house concerts. This is probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And we babysat this wonderful Kwai piano, take care of it, and baby grand. And we would have these in kind of music of the conservatory in neighborhoods. It's kind of was what it was. We had a great time. Some wonderful pianists played.
So, are you familiar by chance with the North Bennett Street School? North Bennett Street School. It is, I believe, the oldest trade school in the country, and they teach, I'm looking it up now. So one of the things, of course, why I would know it is they teach piano technology. So they teach people how to, tune and repair and, rebuild pianos and stuff like that. And they also do, let's see here, they do some interesting stuff, bookbinding, cabinet and furniture making, carpentry, jewelry,
Boston, right?
jewelry making and repair, locksmithing, and then piano tuning and technology is one thing. Preservation carpentry and violin making and repair.
Is this in Boston?
This is in Boston.
Yeah, I think it's in the Boston's North End, the Italian section, because
Yep, that would make
I
sense.
walked by it and I was like, oh, I didn't realize the history of it, but yeah, see,
Yeah,
Boston has a rich history.
150 North Street, Boston. Yeah. So check it out sometime. You might find it interesting. Tell me more about Boston and what, like your connection with the area. I forget, is that where you're from or?
Born in Oklahoma, raised in Colorado, and
Okay.
I moved to Boston for school. And an actual funny story is I moved to Boston. I went to BU for a year, and I was studying guitar, and my oldest brother called me up and said, "Hey, Aaron, get me that piece Asturias." And I was like, "Yeah, you know that piece?" Because I heard Andres Segovia play it in my high school Spanish class. He didn't come, they had a video.
Mhm.
And I went, that's the Doors, because the Doors use that theme, da dee da 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 bum, in their song Spanish Caravan. And so when I heard that, that was my shift from electric guitar to classical guitar. And then,
Mhm.
so a few years later, a couple years later, my brother calls me and says, I want the sheet music, because he had played piano. And I said, Ben, that's my favorite piece. Like, you know that piece? And he says, of course I do. When you were a kid, he's 9 years older than me. When you were a little baby, I would sit you in my lap and I would try to play Asturias. And so it was in my, be careful what you play for your kids. Was it
Subconscious, went into your deep subconscious.
exactly. So I moved out, went to BU for a year, and then I transferred to the New England Conservatory. And I studied there and graduated and then got jobs and was teaching in various community schools, performing, gigging. chamber music. I did weddings. I did anything to make a buck legal that I could do. And then as time progressed, I made a small name for myself with my programming. I've always wanted, I think a life without writing for guitar is a life unfulfilled. So I started asking composers to write at first dances, and then I had the new Lullaby Project. And then I would do educational programs like young people's concerts. And I would organize concerts, tour, and figured if people aren't going to call me, I'll set something up. And then people started calling me. And I think it was about 2013, 14, I started working with pianist Seymour Bernstein in New York.
Oh yes, Seymour Bernstein. Yeah.
And
Crazy character. We got to get him on here. We talked about it before. Somebody,
he's a bit older, so you better do that very quickly.
yeah. One or two of our guests have studied with him, even I think currently. Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, I worked with him over about a 3-year period of time. I'd go down to New York probably 2 or 3 times a year, and I wanted to have. I always think 19th century music is really hard on the guitar. It's either, pastiche or this repetition that just doesn't. Piano music develops. Guitar, you have to use bar chords and to change keys. And so you have these amazing, very short pieces, but then we don't want to go to the minor third. We don't want to go to this key to that key. And so Schubert is really good in one key, but as soon as he starts modulating, you can't do all of it. And so I went to him with a bunch of music and said, I want to know how you would solve these issues on the piano so I can do it on the guitar. Because guitarists tend to be very nice to each other. Oh, that's hard, take time, or here, glissando, do this. I didn't want guitar response, I wanted piano response. Here, oh, that's a Beethoven figure. This is what he's doing, and not playing Beethoven, but 19th century guitar composers. And then I played some Bach for him. There's a Bach fugue that Bach did in G minor for violin. He did a version for lute in A minor, and then there's a version for organ in D minor. And I never liked the fact there was no prelude to the fugue. So I took the organ fugue, which has a prelude, and I stole the prelude and I put it into A minor and recorded it. And then I made a mashup of the 3 of kind of my favorite parts. He has harmonies in the organ version. There's 7th chords and diminished chords that just don't exist in the violin version because they can play 2 to 3 notes. It just nothing against the violin. It's a lovely instrument, second to the cello, of course, or 4th. We should put that on the list. And so I played that for Seymour, and he looked at me and goes, "Oh, you need to keep doing this, and you should do more." And so then he handed me Gottes Zeit ist der allerbeste Zeit, which is, if you've seen his movie Seymour documentary, it's the last piece he plays, and it is gorgeous. And he said, "Arrange this for guitar," and I did, and that became the title track of my album, God's Time. And I could play it or not, but it's one of those. He's just, even though I only saw him so many times, he's just very close to my heart, and I think of him as a great inspiration. And yeah, so piano is always.
How again did that come together?
I saw him give a master class. He was friends with one of the faculty, I think at Yale, and he came and gave a master class, and I liked what he was saying. And this is when I was like 19, and I was in the audience. And then my teacher at the time, David Leisner, he had recommended that I read Seymour's book, With Your Own Two Hands. And I read it, and I'm like, oh, that's like everything that David was teaching me. I mean, slight variations. And I read the book. And so then I just wrote to Seymour. I said, "Hey, I'm a guitarist. Here's a couple of videos. And I would like to," and as I explained, I said, "I'm playing 19th century music and I'd like to get your opinion." And he wrote back, you know, I'm a pianist. And I said, yes, yes. And he goes, and you know, I don't like John Cage and Elliot Carter, which were the two videos I sent him. I don't care for either of them. And but he said, you're a formidable player. And if you want to come down, come on down. And he was just, I played for him, and it was kind of like, you know, this warm hug of, you're on the right track. And he was what I needed at that time. And I still think about those lessons all the time. And he's, no, Aaron, you have to do this. And I went to master classes. I'd watch his pedaling. I mean, there's so much to learn from different instruments. And yeah, so that's how that happened.
Yeah, there is a lot to learn from different instruments. I mean, as you say that, I think about how recently, you know, I don't perform right now. You know, my life is more almost like an entrepreneur with a little bit of creative stuff going on, but and like a media thing, whatever. But I'll sit down at home and I'll just play stuff. You know, the other day, for some reason, I started listening to Slip Sliding Away, Paul Simon, you know, and I was like, oh, let me just learn that, you know, I learned the song. Oh, wow, there's an interesting seventh chord I never realized, you know, and then I would play along with it, learn it, listen to the bass, you know, the keyboards, the singing, and then I'll take it and play. And then I started, well, what if I played it a half step higher, you know, a half step lower? And I just kind of like playing around with stuff. And similarly to playing different instruments, when you play in different keys, you get different ideas, you know. And the song, I noticed as I played it in different keys, like the whole song sounded different. I did this recently with like Jingle Bells too, you know, just playing Jingle Bells, messing around with it, and I played a different key. Like, but oh, I got a groove. I played a groove for it. This one was more, you know, like bluesy. But that's a very good point, because when you pick up a different instrument, or even just like play with someone that plays a different instrument, again, you can't help but get different ideas. I don't, I'll say one more thing about this, and then, you know, you can speak and maybe play a little bit more. But when you played the piano piece, there was a moment where the pianist is playing and it gets probably the loudest part in the piece. And as I heard that in the context of hearing you play the guitar, I was like, wow, that somehow it's a piano, but it almost sounds like the timbre. He changed the timbre at that moment. And it very much sounded like when you were taking your right hand and reaching up to the very ends of the strings, right? I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, and that piece, I kept it in two voices. I mean, and that's when I tell composers writing for the guitar, start with two voices. Don't think of it as a piano. Think of it as maybe a string instrument with a cello on the bottom. You know, there's ways to think about it. And I was looking for a specific tone. I have the guitar. It's in my ear, and I wrote some really dense contrapuntal music, and I still hear it as a guitar. First instrument I played was clarinet, and every time I hear a good clarinet player, it's like my whole body goes, oh, hear that? And I think there's just something about it, and especially the nostalgia of that first instrument. I see Laurie Spiegel is here, and wonderful, amazing composer. And she wrote a lullaby for my new Lullaby Project. And I wrote to her originally because I know hers electronic music. She's one of like the forefront of electronic music in the world. I think her music is up in one of the satellites or one of this. I mean, it's just awesome. And she sent me this little guitar piece, no electronics, no nothing. And then I was like, what, wait, what, but. She's like, well, guitar is my first instrument. And it was like, oh. And I think everyone has this relationship with sound that is so, it's personal. And I like to say, like, when when my students are playing too quietly, I want them to play loudly, but as if their mother is, you know, angry at them, but they're in public. You know, there is such a forcefulness, a full sound, but it's whispered. And I think all of these relationships we have, especially with sound and the instrument, they come through. And the Lullaby Project, what am I supposed to tell someone? Like, no, that's not a lullaby. I mean, there are a few I've had to say that doesn't quite work.
Come on now.
But,
Right.
in general, I think just the guitar brings out that idea. Composer wrote to me and added a tremolo part in this cello guitar piece. I think if that's Reed, I think it's his. And I asked why, and he said he remembered. Oh no, it's Daniel Pinkham. Sorry, composer Daniel Pinkham, who told me the story of walking through the old part of Barcelona, and he heard guitar being played, and it's Recuerdos de la Alhambra, and he said, ever since then I've wanted to write for the guitar. And this is a memory 60 years earlier, and every piece goes back to that experience. That is music. I'm like, that's like, recordings are awesome. I love them. Please buy all of them. Listen to them all the time. But that experience can't be replicated. And I think that's the essence of why music and magic were so, religion and music. All of these ideas about music are so powerful that hopefully I don't want to say I hope we don't lose that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, you're reminding me actually, I took some time to do like some singer-songwriter type of music many years ago. And as I began to do it, one thing I tried to emulate was that folk guitar sound of kind of like picking through chords. And it was really fun to kind of give that a try. And it felt relatively unique, like ultimately once I got finished kind of pulling together a style on that, it was interesting. But yeah, inspired by another instrument. I'd love to have you play maybe one last thing. If people have questions or they want to enter into the conversation, all we could do a little bit of that. No pressures. A lot of times we don't even do that. But if people did want to say something, raise your hand digitally or make a comment in the chat. I'll read this comment. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just read Johan's comment.
Yeah. Do you want me to read it out loud, or do you want to read it? Or
go ahead.
Yeah, so Johan is a regular attendee here. He said, I love listening to this conversation. I am also one of those who has worked for John Cage for 10 days at the then Banff School of Fine Arts, where he taught a 10-day masterclass. I prepared the piano for him every day. What struck me was how personal his music is. It seems transparent in a way that exposes the character of a musician, which becomes mixed in with the music. Never to forget.
I went to Banff in early 2020, January 2020, and I was there to do more Cage work. And I was walking through one of the rooms, and they had pictures of the famous artists who had been there, artists in residence, and Cage was there. And I went, oh, and I went to the library. I said, I saw Cage was here, and can I get some info? And they gave me, a box which had just files and photos. So Johan, I've probably seen pictures of you. Because it was for that masterclass that he was there. And it was just, I was so happy that happened. So that was very cool. Thank you, Johan.
Yet another John Cage connection for you.
There you go. What do we want? Let's see. I can do, I'll try it. We'll see let's see what happens.
Okay.
This is Gottes Zeit ist die allerbeste Zeit by Johann Sebastian Bach. God's time is the very best time. This is from one of his early cantatas, and my arrangement.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I didn't know a lot about that piece, but I'm looking it up here. God's time is the very best time, and time in the sense of timing, I'm guessing. And of course, it's not referring to musical timing per se. God has the best rhythm. um, it says it's an early sacred cantata composed in Mulhausen, intended for a funeral.
Yes. And the original doesn't sound like that at all. It's two recorders doing this oscillation over each other. And
Mm.
it's unbelievable. I mean, yeah, it's a different piece. And then Seymour arranged it, and I saw his piano version, which tries to use the echo that is happening in the recorders. And his is using pedals to do that. And it's beautiful. It's the closing piece on his movie, Seymour documentary. And then I did it, and over time I adjusted. I try different things, and they all just keep living. And it's available online, and it's on the album God's Time. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I don't see a whole lot of questions or comments here, so we don't have to go into that domain.
Tom, no questions from you, Tom. Really?
No, Tom,
Yeah.
you got any?
I'm trying to get my audio.
Oh, I hear somebody.
Can you hear me?
Is that Larry?
Can you
Yeah.
hear me? Can you hear me?
Can
Well,
you
I
hear
hear
me?
two. I hear two people now. I hear
So-
someone whose name says Tread, and
Larry-
then
It's Thomas Reed.
that's Thomas
Hey.
Reed. Okay.
So Tom Silver, let's do you second. But Larry, great to see you.
Yeah. So when are you going to do some Morton Feldman?
You know what? I've looked into some of his pieces.
I will hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I love Feldman. I love experiencing it. There's a wonderful cello piano album out that came out. Stephen Morato, who I've played with, it's on Mode. Awesome album of the cello music of Feldman. His sustain that is required, I'd probably have to add in some kind of electronic element to the guitar, because I just
Yeah.
or also
He-
really uses the piano like
Yeah.
much.
Didn't he write something for guitar?
Not that I've seen.
That's because he didn't meet you.
He hasn't been gone down the
You're
Aaron.
after his time.
Yes, but so I know people who play it, but most of them are an electric guitar where they can
Oh.
use different effects
Sustain.
to get the sustain, and it really does come down to sustain. But thank you, I'll look into it.
Shouldn't be necessary. I mean, with the piano pieces,
I don't know, but
put your pedal down.
thank you, Larry. I told you I have pedal envy. That's that's it.
I'll stay out of this.
Okay.
I see a list of Morton Feldman's compositions on Wikipedia here.
I don't think
There is the Straits of Magellan for flute, horn, trumpet, harp, electric guitar, piano, and double bass. There is the Possibility of a New York for electric guitar. And yes, yeah, go ahead.
I think we have to remember that during, let's say, the 1940s through the 1970s, until like the early 1970s, most of the guitar population was very conservative. Coming out of the Andres Segovia school,
Mhm.
Julian Bream had an amazing contemporary music album that
Yeah.
came out in the 70s. But before that, it was, Segovia told Ravel not to write for him. He ignored Stravinsky. I love Segovia. I hate that aspect of him. So I've done the opposite. And I've talked with David Starobin at Manhattan School in Curtis, who he had said John Cage was going to write an original piece for guitar for him. But then he got sick and died suddenly. So it didn't happen. And it was really kind of the David Starobin and probably 3 or 4 other guitarists in the country who were doing what we would consider contemporary music at that time. And so it's just now it's every guitarists we do it. So
Mhm.
But
Do
Tom,
Well, the
And-
reason the
Yeah,
reason
well-
Feldman occurred to me was because uh, I met him, I worked with him for a while, and he was always trying to get the music to come from far away.
mm,
And one of the pieces we did, De Kooning, I think it was,
mhm.
he wanted us to put the cover that usually goes on top of the piano case, heavy cloth cover, over all the strings of the piano. Take the lid off, put the cover on the strings.
Oh,
So
wow.
you would get almost a guitar, like a muted guitar.
And you know,
The only problem is that it also had a tuba in there.
well, and one of my favorite
And the
quotes,
bass drum, he was very proud of our bass drum. We finally got it. He said it was like the subway in New York.
one of my favorite quotes of the guitar is it sounds like nostalgia.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's very interesting. I hadn't thought of that effect. Tom Silver, do you have a question?
Yeah, I love what you've done with contemporary music for guitar, but I want to ask a conservative-oriented question.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know if you saw the email I sent you a couple of days ago. You did. Okay. Is there any chance that you might find some time ever to work on Claire de Lune?
It has been, yeah, you sent me an arrangement of it, and I know probably 4 or 5. Debussy on guitar, I know 3 or 4 people who have done wonderful work with it. I haven't dived into it. There's a couple of pieces that I have on my list of kind of to do. Um, I mean, he's another pedal man. I mean, it's just so it's just work to make it sound as easy as it does on the keyboard on a piano. And I think for me, I always start in and I'm like, oh, this is going to be, 6 months of lifting
Yeah.
to make it that.
It sounds like a lot. Did you get a chance to listen to that woman
Not
play?
yet. I will.
Okay.
I promise, Tom.
She does. She draws a beautiful tone from the instrument, and I like the way she played in the beginning, and I think she kind of fell off a little bit later in the piece. But I know you would do a beautiful job, and it's such a fantastic piece. So I just put in my dibs,
Okay.
hopes for that eventually. Let's say.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, and people may not know Tom Silver is part of the Debussy mafia,
Yeah.
and he intimidates people into playing Debussy. And here he is and exhibiting in full form.
I'll
So
get hit. I'll get hit.
much
by
respect to you, Tom. We we appreciate your passion. Thank
One
you.
of the projects I'm doing now with keyboard is I'm working with a composer, excuse me, Vineet Shende, who's at Bowdoin College. And Vineet, born in Chicago, raised in Chicago, from his family is from Pune, India, which is just on the border of South India, North India in the middle. And he's reimagining Bach preludes as if Bach were from South India, from like Mumbai. And so they're called Carnatic preludes. And I arrange the Bach keyboard pieces for the guitar, and he does, and then we pair it with his reimagined. So there's like a. So we go through and we do all of them. That's a really hard prelude, but that is so Scarlatti. I think these guys met because the form of the second book of Well-Tempered Clavier, it's all, you have all these AABB forms, and it's just, you have these riffs that are so Scarlatti-like. Anyway, that's my rabbit hole. So I'm working on that project, which will be a recording coming out hopefully in 27. He's doing 10, I'm doing 10, and I've been performing them. You can hear a couple of them. The Prelude 1 is on God's Time. And then the E flat minor from I think it's book 2, the most beautiful sound when I hear there's a Russian pianist that plays it, and it sounds like silk when he does it. That's on there, and there'll be more. So the piano's always right by my side.
I wonder how Bach would sound on sitar. Speaking of India.
Well, they don't do, you'd need another instrument because Indian music is linear. They don't work with harmony the way that we work with harmony in the vertical style. So when Vin does this prelude, we have so it's similar, but it's not. And so it's a fusion of the two. But so there you go.
Thank you, Tom, for your engagement. I appreciate that. Anybody else want to participate? Otherwise, we'll wrap up pretty soon. We usually end at the hour, but it's fun if people want to chat a little bit. Yeah, thank you guys for showing up. It is really nice to have you here. What was that?
What about other whack job pianists that you could? I mean, there's Busoni.
Busoni. Oh, there's a great Busoni. I love Busoni. I actually, the piano school is so strong.
There's a lot of those Busoni pieces that.
Yeah, and Busoni Bach. What I do is I looked at a lot of the Bach Busoni pieces and said, how did Busoni fix this view?
Yeah.
Right. And then Mussorgsky, I've played pictures at an exhibition, which is a Japanese guy, Kazuhito Yamashita, arranged it. It's on YouTube. It's amazing.
At the beginning of this, I missed the beginning of your show. Did you talk about what you did with the cage prepared piano effects? Okay.
Yes.
I won't go back over that.
Okay. No, we put, so what I did do in that, put paper in the strings.
Yeah.
And then I had an alligator clip with 2 washers that bit the string. So when the certain pitches needed to have the alligator clip or the buzz, I would do that. And then there were certain pitches in the middle of the piece that were supposed to buzz, and the guitar is really good at buzzing. I just don't
I swear that's where George Crumb got the effects in Ancient Voices.
Yeah.
Not with the guitar.
Yeah.
In fact, I think he does that with paper under the.
Yeah. So
the thing that I've always wondered is pianists in the Ancient Voices, you have to take a chisel and rub it along the piano strings. And I was watching a video of a performance of that piece, and I kept thinking, what happens if one of those strings at how many pounds per pressure breaks when you're doing?
Well, Ethan, what do you think of prepared piano? Are you kind of like,
do you know that piece?
See it being done? Are you always like, ooh, Steve Brewery did
I mean, can you imagine taking a chisel and doing that? You're rubbing it back?
Yes, so we've had Mario Egrek is a pretty well-known piano technician who is a technician at Juilliard. And we do have a class in the library about him being a college and university technician. I believe he also was a college technician, university technician in Louisiana. I forget which institution. And he's written a book, one of the most comprehensive works on pianos from a technical aspect. And so he gave a lecture for us in our library on being the college and university technician. And there was a section on how do you deal with prepared piano. He's dealing with these musicians at Juilliard. They're very talented, but they are students, they're very ambitious, and so you don't want students just running and, hey, I'm doing prepared piano, and they just go pick up some screws from Home Depot and throw them in there. And so the way he approaches it is he has specific suggestions, right? So talk to me, we'll work together, we'll decide what you're going to use in this particular part of the piece. And who knows, by this point, maybe there's a few, kind of common switch outs that you might do, like, hey, it might be, hey, let's not use the chisel, let's use this, it'll be similar. Or, if a string does break though, if you were using a chisel and it happened to make a string break, it wouldn't be the end of the world. You'd hear a pop, and the string would snap, and it would be a little bit scary. The worst I think that could happen would be the string could come, if somebody's not wearing any eye protection, come and scrape them in the eye. That's probably the worst that could happen. If you break multiple strings at the same time, that's where it becomes quite dangerous because you've got, thousands of pounds of pressure,
Well, that's what they do in
tension.
that's what happens in the ancient voices because it's
Oh,
right
they
in the
actually
middle
break the
range.
string?
They
No,
don't break it.
no,
They
they
No.
don't
don't
break,
break it.
but they go in,
But
they do multiple
the
strings.
place where he has to use the
Yeah.
chisel,
Yeah.
as I recall, is sort of right around middle C area.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, if you were to break like, many of the strings at the same time, then it becomes
Yeah,
problematic.
and
But
it's an interesting scene to watch because you think there's danger involved.
We
mm,
we hosted a house concert with pianist Barbara Laurence, who is a Boston area, and she did horsehair. There was bowing, string bowing, there
Yeah,
was prepared
yeah,
piano, and she had
yeah,
organized the concert around these different tunings.
yeah.
And then, but she came the day before. She had taken a class about how to prepare it. And that's actually where I first heard Dream by John Cage. And I was listening. I'm like, I have to play this on guitar. And
Mhm.
so her concert really planted the seeds
Yeah,
of inspiration that I think that's what
yeah.
live music is for, is to go and experience.
Whatever happened? It's E. Curtis Smith, I think, who did a lot of what he called the string piano, just pulling strings back and forth this way over the pianos, leave it under the piano string.
Yeah, horsehair. They use like
I
bowing.
think
Yeah.
some kind of
mm.
chord because you can't just use any string. I mean, it's
Oh, got
not
it.
going to
Yeah,
make
like
sound.
almost bowing the
Yeah,
the piano
exactly.
strings. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Well, thank
Well,
Interesting sound. Very interesting sound.
thank you
I
so much. Thank you so much. Was that Reed? Would you say Thomas Reed? Who's
Thomas.
been
Yeah.
Thomas Reed? Yeah. Thank you so much for participating. We probably should sign off because we usually end about 15 minutes ago, but it's fine. It's been fun. One, last from you, Aaron. Where would you like to send people? Give them something to check
Um,
out. Advice, whatever.
My website is alcguitar.com.
Hmm.
alcguitar.com. I'm on Spotify, Amazon, Bandcamp.
Hmm.
Scores are through the American Composers Alliance, for which I am a member and board member. And I will be touring in California at the end of the month. I'll be in Ventura, um, what is it? Encinitas, La Jolla, and then San Francisco, at UC Berkeley and Center for New Music, doing some great works with electronics and a small micro opera. But yeah, I'm on YouTube and all of these. And if anyone has any questions or comments, disagreements, happy to debate the rivalry between guitar and piano. Piano doesn't know guitar exists, but that's okay. We won't.
You're lucky you
Wonderful.
could cut us off that quickly. Aaron and I get going. We'll go.
Okay.
We'll
All
go.
right. All right. It's you reemerged.
We'll see you.
Thank you very much, Tom. All right. We have reached the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks to Aaron for joining us today. As always, we are brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. For those of you that joined us today for signing up for the session individually, make your life more convenient, subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour. And that's just $16 a month. You get the recording of today's session in a member area, automatic registration for each week's new session. You can sign up at bit.ly/join PTRH, bit.ly/join PTRH. And don't forget about the podcast, pianotechradio.com, the blog on Substack. Just look us up there. And all the social medias, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We try to keep things rolling out there. And also get on our email list. Just go to pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. It's right there. Enter your email address and you can keep up to date with what we're up to. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Aaron, if you want, I'll close out the session here. But if you want to jump back on, just you and me, and we'll do a little wrap up.